This has been a rather tumultuous week in financial markets. If you follow the events on CNBC or some other news outlet, you'll know that there have been a lot of things going on. The federal government stepped in to rescue Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac as they were in severe financial trouble. Next in the docks was Lehman Brothers, an investment bank that also has been seeing their share value plummet. There is a lack of confidence in their ability to raise cash and to meet their debt obligations. There are a number of banks that are possibly in line for also major financial problems. There's AIG, the insurer. There is Washington Mutual. And then after that, who knows? We've already had a potential run on a bank in Indiana that was squelched when the government took over that bank. We had the government take over Bear Stearns last summer, or perhaps in the early spring. And so there is this kind of financial hurricane hitting our markets at the moment, which could have significant impact on the economy. In fact, this weekend in Manhattan, representatives of a variety of banks, along with the federal government, are meeting with Lehman Brothers to figure out a way to save the company. The nation of Germany has advised us to get it solved before the Tokyo markets open. Otherwise, there could be a cascade of financial failures coming in this week ahead. If you thought Hurricane Ike was devastating, wait till you see what happens. What do you do when everything goes wrong? How do you handle a potential financial meltdown? It does not need to be a national issue that catches our attention. It could be a personal issue as well. Families go through a wide variety of troubles. They may go through prolonged experiences of difficulty. And questions may arise in your personal life as to what is God's purpose in all this. Now, at the outset, I should say that just because we have troubles, just because there are challenges that come before us, does not mean that there is a specific reason or problem behind it all. We live in a fallen world. There is sin all around us. There are problems that we must face day after day. And as those who are subject to the fall and under the curse of God, generally on our culture, our world today, there will be problems. And so the fact that you are experiencing difficulty or trouble at the moment may not necessarily be because of a specific event in your past that needs to be rectified. But certainly, those kinds of things should cause us to examine ourselves, to reflect, to seek the Lord, to try to know and understand what His purpose is in all of this. This was David's response to a very difficult circumstance in his life. It's interesting when we take a look at this text here in 2 Samuel, in chapter 21, that the historian begins introducing this account to us in rather vague language. He says it happened during the reign of David. Well, when during the reign of David did this famine occur, or this drought occur? The language is vague and non-specific. As we're reading through the book of Samuel, you might think, well, it's after the war with Absalom, and probably after that, crops would have failed. There have been all kinds of dislocations because of the war, and so there might have been troubles in getting the economy going again after that. And so you can imagine how David could see 1 year of drought pass and not be too concerned about it, maybe a second year and perhaps be concerned, but not seeing any specific spiritual problem behind it. But then when the third year came around and there was continued drought, then he began to think very seriously, there's got to be more to it than just the normal economic cycle of things. So David seeks the Lord's help. The historian, however, does not really tell us when exactly this took place. It could have taken place earlier in David's reign. And that's possible in view of the fact that you have a number, later on, descendants of Saul who are still apparently young men who are going to be executed. And it's quite possible that this took place not too long after the events themselves, after Saul's death. So when commentators take a look at this text, they have a hard time deciding whether this took place within a few years after David was established as king over all of Israel, or many years down the line, maybe 30 or 40 years after the event took place that caused it all. There's some difference of opinion there. Because of the vagueness of the language, I'm inclined to think that this took place earlier in David's reign. And the story is inserted here for thematic purposes, not chronological purposes. And the clue to that, I think, occurs in the way that this book comes to an end. As we are here in the latter part of 2 Samuel, we are now focusing on the very end of David's life. And what you have in chapter 21 through chapter 24 is a kind of a set of bookends to the end of the life. And the bookends mirror each other. In terms of hermeneutics and theology, we describe this as something of a chiasm, or a parallel, inverted parallel, where the storyline parallels itself, going in one direction and coming away from it. And so you have a bookend, which you have parallel events. In this chapter, you have a great sin, hardship being brought, and then a sacrifice done to appease God and to bring blessing again. The 24th chapter has the same event occurring, the same kind of thing, where David commits a sin in performing a census, God brings judgment, David provides a sacrifice, and there is blessing. So you have these events of sacrifice at either end here, moving in towards the center. As you move towards the center, the next chapters in talk about David's mighty men and their great accomplishments in battle. That immediately follows the story in 2 Samuel 21 and immediately precedes the conclusion in chapter 24. And then at the heart of these events is David's psalm of praise and his last words. Now, when the historian uses that kind of artistry to tell his story, what does he have in mind? I think what we will see here is that he is once more pointing us to the cross of Christ in a powerful way. He is calling us to meditate on the significance of that cross. Now, he certainly doesn't tell us about Jesus himself. He does not specifically go into a theological disquisition of the need for the mediator, the Redeemer, the anointed one to suffer and to die. But as we look through these chapters, we're going to see that the cross becomes prominent in the course of this text. That Christ, the anointed one, must suffer. And in that suffering, his glory will be manifested. He will be the salvation of God's elect. So in taking a look at this 21st chapter, we have this unusual providence of a drought extending for 3 years. And David tries to understand what is going wrong. Why did God bring this drought into our lives? And so he does what we should do. We sought the Lord. He went before the Lord, perhaps in the temple, or the tabernacle rather, and sought guidance from the Lord with regard to why this drought had occurred. You see, David's view of God was not that of the deist or the modernist today who believes that God is somewhere off in the distance, who sets the world in motion and then sits back and allows it to work itself out according to its own inner dynamics